Hey, welcome back. Here, we're gonna start our discussion of chapter 3, the Asian tigers. So, in the previous chapter, we finished our discussion about Japanese economic takeoff. Okay, and here we're gonna talk about the four relatively small Asian economies. They became industrialized after Japan. Okay, and these four Asian tigers are South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Okay? And as we said at the beginning of this semester, when we talk about the syllabus, I already said that we're gonna in this chapter, okay, we're gonna focus upon Taiwan and South Korea because of multiple reasons. Now, among them, the most important one is, Hong Kong and Singapore are both city economies. In other words, they're pretty small territory, okay, in terms of their territory and population, and their economic development could be considered as outliers for many other countries, especially developing countries. Okay? In other words, what Singapore and Hong Kong experienced may not be that useful or helpful for other developing countries to copy or to learn. Okay? And of course, if you guys are interested in Hong Kong or Singapore, you can talk to me after class, okay? Or we may say if you are interested in an opportunity to make a presentation about either of them, okay? All right, and here let me show you the roadmap of this chapter. Okay, what we're gonna discuss about South Korea and Taiwan. Okay, and of course their economic development are also quite complicated. Okay, there are many interesting points we could explore, but here are the four I picked because I think these are the quite important ones. Also, these are the ones we did not really discuss when we talk about Japan. Okay? So it doesn't mean these are a list of, a thorough list of the important factors that drove economic success for Taiwan and South Korea. Okay? There are many other factors unlisted here. For example, saving, okay, in technological innovation. But from the theoretical perspective, we already discussed these things when we talk about Japan. So that's why I don't want to be much repetitive here. Okay, so that's why we're gonna start our discussion with the colonial history or experience of Taiwan and South Korea. Okay, and because both were occupied by Japan, okay? Especially before the end of the World War II. Okay? And the second thing, which we will briefly discuss, is invest heavily in education and agriculture. The third one we're going to talk about is the managed trade and exchange rate policies. And the last one is external threats. Okay? Now, we're going to spend relatively more time talking about the third and the fourth points. Okay? All right. Just like, what we did before, here we're going to take historical, regional, and geographical and institutional approach, okay, to discuss the economic development of South Korea and Taiwan. Okay, and as we said, this is quite unique, compared to other economics courses you already took. Okay, now here is a map back in the late 19th century. Okay? So as you can see, China back then is called the Qing Empire. Okay? It's the last dynasty in China's history. Okay? In the Qing Empire. And here is Japan. Okay? The Empire of Japan. And here is Korea. Okay? So back then, Korea is actually a tributary state of Qing Empire. In other words, the Korean government admitted that the or like the Qing Empire has a superior power, okay? And the Korean government also paid the tribute to Qing Empire in exchange for any military help or the national defense demand, okay, to protect Korea from the foreign invasions, okay. And here, this island is Taiwan, right here, okay. And back then, it was part of the Qing Empire, okay. And because of the industrialization and modernization of Japan, and it definitely has the demand to, kind of copy what Great Britain did, okay, like expand and occupied its neighboring countries, okay. But remember, we said that for more than 1,000 years in history, Japan was also a tributary state to China, okay, or the Qing Empire, okay. So it's, as you can see, from the geographical perspective, Japan's territory is much smaller than the Qing Empire, right? And the population is also smaller, not to mention GDP, okay. Actually, before 19th century, there are many economic historians believed that the Qing Empire is the largest economy around the world. Okay, it's much bigger than Great Britain, United States, and many other European countries. Okay, so when Japan wanted to, occupied its neighboring countries, geographically, it's pretty natural to start with Korea, right? So they just want to test the water, right? And they were back then, not that confident, they would become the superpower in the region. Okay? They want to test, how strong the Qing Empire was, okay? Because when Japan did its Meiji Restoration, China also tried to modernize and industrialize. Okay, and so Japan invaded Korea. Okay, and as we said, because Korea back then was a tributary state, so Korea asked help from the Qing Empire. Okay, and so the Qing sent the army to Korea and helped them fight against Japanese. Okay, this is so-called the First Sino-Japanese War. Okay, it broke out in 1894. Okay, about let's see, 30 years after the Meiji Restoration. Okay, all right. This map shows you, the military movements during the First Sino-Japanese War. By the way, the Second Sino-Japanese War was between 1937 to 1945. So that's during the Second World War. Okay, and the First Sino-Japanese War historically was quite important, if not more important than the Second Sino-Japanese War. Okay, not just for Japan, China, these two countries directly involved, but also Korea, as we said, and many other laboring economies. Okay, so for the whole East Asian region, Okay, it's super important even when we look at today's geopolitics, economic relationship, and many other aspects. Okay, all right. So as we said, upon the Koreans' request, Qing dynasty sent the armies, with both land route here this way and the water route, okay, sent to Korean and help them fight against Japanese. And during the same time, Japan realized that they have to cut off these logistic lines. Okay, so they sent the Japanese imperial levy, okay, to sail. Japan is out here, right? And they sent the levy, all the way to very close, like the coastal area of Korea and even China. Okay, so eventually, the imperial levies of the two countries, Japan and China, the Qing dynasty of China, encountered here. Okay, it's on the Yellow Sea, which is part of the Pacific. Okay, but as you can see, it's very close to the coastal area of China and Korea. Okay, it's actually in this the tidal mouth of Yalu River. Yeah, it's the largest river in that region. Okay, and then the encounter of these two imperial levies are very brutal. Okay, and this battle, fundamentally changed the forces, military and political and economic forces in that region. Okay? Here, as you can see, the comparison of the two levies, during the war. Okay, and on the left-hand side is Imperial Levy of Japan. On the right-hand side is for the Qing China. Okay, and as you can see here, you probably would find that in terms of the strength, the Imperial Levy of Qing China is actually stronger. Okay, and they have two battleships. Okay, and each of them is over like 7,000 tons. And so in terms of the, I think the displacement, okay, the total displacement, the Imperial Levy of Qing China was ranked number 6 or number 7 worldwide. Okay, it's definitely number 1 in the region. Okay, and Japan did not really have that big battleship. Okay, so that's why we said, at the beginning of the war, Japan was not that confident, they could beat China. All right, but let's look at the results or the losses. Okay, Japan lost 380, the sailors or soldiers, okay, killed or wounded, but Qing China lost 1,350. Okay. More importantly, in terms of the battleships, one protected cruiser sunk, and one armed cruiser sunk, and two other light cruisers sunk. So the results is the Imperial Navy of Japan won, okay, and China lost a lot. In terms of the battleships and sailors, soldiers. Okay, these one thing we have to say is these battleships, most of them, especially the big ones, are what they bought from the Europe, especially from Great Britain and Germany. Okay, and again, most of them for both sides. Okay, Japan and China. All right, so. After this war, Japan occupied a large portion of Korea and occupied the whole territory of Taiwan. Okay, so that's why we use this, the First Sino-Japanese War as the starting point of our discussion for Taiwan in South Korea.